Welcome all of you. We will start the session at 11:30. We have a couple of minutes time. If you would like to introduce yourself, you can. Mr. Lourdes Swami, would you like to introduce?
Hi, good morning. My name is Madhukar. Good morning, Mr. Govindaraj. Namaskara. Thank you very much, and looking forward to listen to you once again. So, my name is Madhukar. I head HR for one of the segment in TE Connectivity. We are based out of Whitefield in Bangalore, and also have multiple offices. So, I head HR for one of the segment as well as shared services organization. Last 25 years in HR. Thank you very much, and I'm very much fond of Govindaraj's webinars or YouTube channels. So look forward to listen to this session as well.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining. Good morning, Mr. Jayakumar.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Govindaraj. How are you?
I am doing fine, sir. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Good to see you after our Tumkur meeting. Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Venkatesh Murthy. How are you?
Fine, sir. Fine. Thank you.
Good morning, Simha Sastri.
Yeah.
Somebody is there from his side.
No, Shankar is representing from his side.
Shankar is there. Okay. Hi, Shankar. How are you?
Morning, sir. Very fine. Thank you. How are you doing, sir? Sima sir is also online.
Sima is also there. Sima, you were at that BNI meeting, is it?
Yeah, finished it.
Okay. Good to have you.
Is it still, thank you, Jabbar. Still going on?
No, just started, no?
Oh, our meeting was over much before.
Yeah.
It was at 9:30.
Yeah, that. Oh, acha.
Good morning, everyone. We have a couple of minutes.
Good morning, Dr. Ramania, sir.
Namaskara, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We have a couple of minutes to go. Anybody else would like to introduce yourself? Dr. Siddharamu?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Siddharamu. Presently, I am working as a faculty member in the Department of Social Work, Gautam Buddha University, Greater Noida.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Siddharamu. Dr. Jayaraman, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, Girish here. Okay, now, myself is Girish. Now I am working with Barista Coffee Company Limited. That is Delhi based.
Switch on your video, please.
I am not able to.
Okay, no problem.
Now it is okay, sir? Okay. Yeah, now I am working with Barista Coffee Company Limited as a regional HR. I'm very junior person in this group. Right? I have only 5 years of experience. I'm very happy to have a meeting with you people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Girish. Nothing called junior and senior here. It's only knowledge sharing.
All our fellow professionals.
All are professionals. Thank you so much, Girish. Anybody else? Hemchandra? We will wait for others to join. We have 4 minutes to go.
Yes.
37 people have joined already. Couple of minutes to go. Welcome all of you.
Good morning, everyone. Muttana here.
Good morning.
Morning, Muttana. Good.
Thank you, Muttana.
So, Muttana from Dubai.
Yes, sir.
Good to have you. How long you are in Dubai now?
5 years almost now. 5 years.
5 years. Very good.
Hello, Mutana. Madhukar here. Good morning.
How are you?
Good, good. Thank you.
Muttana is our association secretary, operating from Dubai.
Nice.
Very nice, very nice.
Remotely supporting, but yeah, James, Venkatesh Murthy and other members are driving it there.
Thank you, Muttana. Mr. Veerabhadram, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, sir. I am Veerabhadram, Department of Social Work, working as assistant professor from Telangana University, sir. Okay. Sir.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Veerabhadram.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see many from social work profession.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Welcome all of you. I request everybody to close your mic, mute yourself. We'll start the session in a couple of minutes' time.
Headphone. Let's see.
I request all of you to mute yourself. We will start the session in 1 minute time. Question answer session will be at the end. I request whenever you feel like asking a question, please type in the chat box. Answers will be given at the end. And feedback link will be given on 7th, the last day of the session. We have 1 more minute to go for 11:30. About 48 people have joined so far. I think many more will join. Welcome all of you to our day 2 program. We have 50 participants join now. 52. All right. Mr. Govindraj, can we start now?
Oh, yes, I am ready.
All right. Good morning. A very warm welcome to everyone to day 2 of webinar series organized by MSW Socialites, Alumni Association of the Department of Studies in Social Work, University of Mysore, Mysuru. Our inaugural session went on very well, and thank you all for your support. Today's session on emerging trends in Indian labor laws by Mr. Govindraj, General Manager HR of Kern Labours India Private Limited. And may I request Mr. Manjunath, our alumnus and Head of HR and Administration of Wistron Infocom Manufacturing Private Limited, Mysore, to introduce Mr. Govindraj. Mr. Manjunath to welcome everyone and introduce Mr. Govindraj.
Manjunath, unmute yourself, please.
Please unmute yourself, sir. Manjunath, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I hope it is audible.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. It is my privilege to introduce Mr. Govindraju. Welcome, sir, once again, and welcome you all who are participants here once again. Govindraju NS is working as a General Manager, Human Resources for Messrs. Kane and Labors India Private Limited, a German multinational in the business of springs and stamping products for automobile, textile, and other industrial applications. He is also current president of Tumkuru HR Forum and immediate past president of Greater Nelamangala Industrial Association in Bangalore area. He also hold a post of postgraduate degree in HR, MSW from University of Bangalore, and Masters in MBA Administration from University of Mysore. He also holds a degree in Bachelor of Law, LLB, that is from University of Bangalore. And Govindraj comes with more 20 years of fabulous industrial experience in HR functions with a variety of experience in HR operations and HR strategies. He worked in different industries, which includes textiles, food, beverages, pharmaceuticals, engineering, and also various sectors, and worked for both Indian and as well as multinational business. Previously, he worked with Sartorius Stadium India Private Limited, a German company in the business of biotech, engineering, and laboratory technologies for more than 7 years as a director HR. He traveled to Asian countries and Europe for human resource training and strategy discussions. During his experience so far, he worked on organization setup, changing management, policy framework, leadership development, talent acquisitions, employee and union relations, worker counseling, especially people and talent management. He is trying to use the CUBE's personality and performance inventory for recruitments and development feedback. He is also active in many professional bodies, which include the National Institute of Personnel Management, that is NAPM, and has been the founder of Industrial Employees Organization. Mr. Govindaraju is also known for his literary and knowledge sharing works. He also authorized 2 books titled Managing Labor Relations, a practical handbook with strategies and techniques, and other books in Kannada and also as well as in local Kannada language on industry relations. He has published many articles and quiz in the area of labor laws and labor relations. He is also sharing knowledge through YouTube channels on labor laws and labor relations. He is also closely associated with industrial associations like CIA, KSSIC, etc., and delivers programs on labor laws and industrial relations topics. Sir, this is a brief introduction. It is still further is there. I don't want to take because if anything I missed out, you can add it, sir. It's most welcome, sir. Thank you. Thank you everybody for giving opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Manjunath, for your elaborate and wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. Now the time is for Mr. Govindaraju to take over the session, and you have about 1 hour time, and we will have about 15 minutes of question and answer session. Over to Mr. Govindaraju.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
First of all, welcome to everyone, and I take this opportunity to thank Dr. James also for giving me this opportunity, Mysore University and also the association, and also the instrumental is Mr. Japakumar, because he is the one who was in touch with me and also requested for me to handle this session. I am very indebted to all these people. But as you know, from the last couple of years, I have been giving whatever I learned so far in the last 20 years, just giving it to the profession. And most of this is coming free. So other than the books which I published, which the publisher has got some cost, but other than this, whatever is available, everything is available in the free domain. So, and I'm also fortunate for my company because they are giving me still the salary. So I don't need to charge for my services or the knowledge so far. And I take this opportunity to thank my company also. And today I am going to handle on the emerging trends on the labor laws. Let me share the screen. Hope it's coming now.
Yeah, it is coming. You can go full screen.
Yeah, it's full screen now.
Yeah, coming.
Okay. So in the meanwhile, I may mute my video because of the bandwidth issues. But sometimes if you have any audible issues or something, you can always raise your hand so that I can check the connections and come back also.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. So the topic today is we are going to handle on emerging trends in Indian labor laws. My brief profile, I don't need to read it again, but just a short profile. I come up with more than 20 years of experience. I'm a master's in social work, basically my original qualification. I also did my master's in business administration and also Bachelor of Law from Bangalore University, and MBA from Mysore Open University, just for all your information. And I authored 2 books, as you rightly said. And I am also a little bit proud to announce this, because so far no one could put the what happens on the ground on labor relations or industrial relations. This is not a theory book. It's basically what happens on the ground, what strategies and what tactics you need to develop, also practice in the industry to become successful in industrial relations. So that is how it is. This book is developed. And this is also available in Kannada. And most of you know that I have my own YouTube channel where I give a lot of updates on labor laws and labor relations and industry news. And today this channel has got more than 3,000 subscribers. And also recently, I'm happy to announce that the YouTube picked up for its monetization program. So I'm happy to announce that. And there are many videos on many topics, including POSH and the labor codes and bonus, whatnot, you get it. More than 56 videos are uploaded, and I'm happy to say also I have got very positive feedback on these videos. And if you want to have more updates, you can always subscribe to this channel and watch these videos for more updates. And be happy to be free to put it your comments in this video, in this channel. Let me tell you what I will cover in this session, because when we talk about emerging trends, basically there are 4 codes which are announced. I am not able to give you full overview of these codes because I have got 1 hour time, but I will try to cover 2 codes little bit detail, and other 2 codes I'll give you just a short brief about it. And also the Social Security Code and Occupational Health and Safety Code, I'll not be able to give you a full answer, because we are still researching on this, because there are very, very enormous changes the government has brought, and today those have been already made it as an act. So I'll not be able to answer your question on those 2 codes, but definitely on the wage code and the IR code, whatever the questions you have, I'll be able to answer to your satisfaction. So let me tell you what I'm going to cover today is I'm going to give you a very brief about how is our legal system today and how our labor laws works. And also, I will also deliberate briefly on why India needs to change or revise its labor laws, and what are the emerging trends in labor law which we are going to see today, and what is this labor codes and what are their highlights. So these are the things which are also going to we are going to discuss on this, and we also make certain conclusions based on the deliberations what we make today. If you look at most of you know that our constitution is the mother of all laws, whether it is labor law or civil or crime. This is our constitution is the mother of all laws in India, and of course, as I said, including the labor laws. And any law is made made in India is required to be in line with the constitutional provisions and rights provided under it. So any legislation which is not in line with constitution, then it can be held as unconstitutional or ultra vires. So, and can be struck down by the courts also. So if you go back to the history and the current trends, many of the provisions are struck down by especially high courts and supreme courts, and those provisions are deleted or struck down from the statute book. So these are also have happened. And if you look at how our legislative section is there in the constitution, the constitution legislative section is divided into 3 lists. So most of you may be aware, one is the union list and the state list, and also the concurrent list. So this is the union list, state list, and concurrent list. Now we have to also look into where is our labor is placed. The subject labor is placed in the concurrent list. So that means if you look at these 3 lists, if a topic is there in the union list, only the union can make legislations, and if it is there in the state, means the state only can make a legislations, and if it is there in the concurrent list, then both central government and state governments can also bring legislations on this matter. So that is how the concurrent list, we are talking about it. And if you look at Indian labor law history, you will find the legislations promulgated and enacted by state as well as center also. So there are sometimes it is duplication, sometimes it's only one law. These are all the things which we have today, and this is also one of the reason for complexity and multiplicity in labor laws today. And now let's also see why India needs to change or revise its labor laws. One question also for all of you is do we require to change the labor law, or is it a revision is required? Is also, people should deliberate on this. And if you look at our legal system, which has got a strong influence from British legal system, and there are many labor laws existing today which are made during British rule, and practically, if you look at, they have not undergone any change so far. For example, I can give you many examples. There is one act called Trade Union Act 1926. So this law is enacted in 1926, and very minor few changes have been done. So barring these minor changes, no changes have been done in this act also. And as I said, we have laws from 1926, even much before that. And if you look at how many labor legislations are there in India today, there are more than 44 central legislations on labor, which is basically enacted by the central government, and this may run into more than 100, including the state legislations, because of the concurrent list, because both have equal power to enact legislations. However, there are certain restrictions. If there is already a central government legislation on the which the state government want to bring, normally the state government law has to be in line with the central government legislation. But if there is a special requirement and they get a precedent assigned, then that law will be valid in that state wherever they bring it. And because of this, because of the central and state legislation, this has created more confusion, multiplicity, and also there is a lot of complexity, and it is also difficult to follow and understand. So I'll tell you why it is very difficult and complexity. And see, today's labor laws lack uniformity. So I give you an example. A wage definition under Provident Fund is not okay for ESI provisions, and also bonus. You take any matter, even for the gratuity, a simple similar definition is not good for, because each law has got its own definition for every matter. So therefore, there is no uniformity, which is creating very difficult and complexity to understand also. And as I said, this has created more problems rather than serving the labor and employers, and which is leading to conflicts and labor unrest, and also compromising industrial growth. So these are all complexities, lack of uniformity. These are creating more conflicts and labor unrest, and also the industrial growth is getting compromised. And there are certain provisions which are unreasonable and difficult to implement. For example, one legislative provisions which I will give you, in the Factories Act, if you read, there are 120 sections and more than 300 rules. There is one rule which talks about, you can also exchange your earned leaves with some other employee. So this looks to be very unreasonable and not in line with the today's context. So that is why I say, there are provisions which are unreasonable, impractical, and difficult to implement as well. So therefore, we need at least a change or revision. And we are not in facilitation mode. Of course, what is coming, I will tell you. We are still in Inspector Raj. The inspection systems are not facilitating the industrial growth and also the employees as well. Now, current labor laws, especially provisions related to retrenchment and closure, are very stringent, and when the business is in need because of the difficulty, they become very stringent. So therefore, we are not in the mode of industry facilitation. And meanwhile, if you look at how the society is behaving, the society is, the requirements of the society are changing, and new employment types are emerging. So let's look at what are the changes. See, if you look at, we have, kind of a gig workers, platform workers, and there is a huge requirement and necessity of the society because of working from home requirements, how to deal with such a situation, what are the problems there. And we are also, seeing pandemic situation, thanks to all the dirty things we did. And today we see a lot of pandemics coming. Today we have corona, yesterday we had SARS, and tomorrow something else will come up. And is the labor law situation, is it helping, supporting the situation to overcome all these things? No, it's definitely not. And the concept of shared services or contractual jobs are increasing, and these are the new trend. And today if you look at the automation is coming, Internet of Things is coming, there is an artificial intelligence. These are all reality today. Now, the current labor law is neither prepared nor has any clue about it. So it has no clue about it. It is not prepared. So that's what I would like to make this statement very clearly. But the good news is that the government has become aware of it, and they are proactively started thinking and started bringing a lot of changes to labor laws. That's the good news we have. And let's also see what are the changes we are witnessing. See, first of all, all these labor laws which are, I talked about 44 legislations and more than 100 state legislations, they are getting codified into 4 codes, and all these 4 codes are now passed by the parliament and waiting for implementation. And the central government, if you look at, the central government is leading and also exercising more control on this subject. And the central government is making all efforts to bring uniformity in labor laws. So that is a good thing which is happening today. And meanwhile, if the states are also not lagging behind, they have also become more aware and proactive and bringing the amendments wherever necessary and suitable for their state. Because so the big brother is leading, and all small brothers are also following the central government directives. Therefore, you see equally some of the changes which are also happening on a state-wise also. And there are certain situations where the state government has no role to play in certain topics which are very state related topics. In that case, what the state government is doing, the central government is proactively publishing model rules and policies which serve as a basis for states to adopt in their states. For example, if you look at the shops and commercial establishment, this is largely a state matter. The central government has no central legislation on this, but the central government is coming up with a model policy or law on this, and many state governments are picking up this, and they are making their own state legislations based on the model. So based on the shops and commercial establishment model law, now every state is following, and the Maharashtra government, of course, now has already enacted a model shops and commercial establishment law, which is basically influenced by the central government model policy or the law on this topic. And moreover, as I said, the central government is pushing all the states to become industry friendly without violating the rights of the workers. But okay, so one question what we need to know is the government overdoing or compromising the rights of the workers in the name of ease of doing and labor law reforms? Because if you see today, you see there are workers are getting protesting these changes, and they're also coupled up with farmers. These are all these things happening. So to answer this question, it looks like partially yes, because if you look at some of the examples, increase in working hours by the Gujarat state government beyond the normal working hours and without the overtime wages, you saw this notification and change. But recently the Supreme Court struck down by the apex court. And you also, many of you may be aware what happened in the state of Karnataka. The state government order to defer the VDA is also now there is a stay. So these are all the changes which are happening, and maybe it also, for certain people, it looks like the government is overdoing and compromising the rights of the workers. And that is where I also say partially yes, because they should not overdo too much, and wherever to protect the rights of the labor have to be protected. And Another development which I see is some vital and substantive provisions of law are now coming in the hands of executive. So this is one of the dangerous development which we see, because if it is there with the executive, then they can also tamper or they can also misuse. There are all possibilities are there. And provisions like varying the application of law to the industries which are either covered or not covered in the original legislation are now coming in the hands of executive. See, some of the legislations where these they have to bring it either only by way of amendments, and only the legislative has the power to bring such changes. But now, because of this codification, there some of the powers are coming in the hands of executive. And we already have examples of striking down these provisions by the courts in the past. See, in the past also there were some of the substantive provisions of law were in the hands of executive, and we saw that the High Court as well as the Supreme Court have struck down these provisions. Because of this reason, we will also see more legal battles on these provisions going ahead. So I'm definitely sure. So these things will come up for interpretation issues, and the courts will strike down these provisions. Now let's also briefly, now I have given you enough understanding and brief how labor law system works, and what is today's situation, why do we need a change, all those things we talked about it. And meanwhile there are some state amendments, there are some central amendments, these are all happening today. But however, it's a good thing is that the codification of labor law is happening. And just to give you some brief about it, how this all happened is, the Second National Commission on Labor originally in 2002 recommended to amalgamate all the labor laws into 5 codes. Basically, they came up with industrial relations, wages, social security, safety, and welfare and working conditions. So these were the originally 5 codes they proposed. But after what happened due to a lot of deliberations, they came up with only 4 codes. So one is industrial relations and wages and social security, occupational safety, health, and working conditions. So these are the 4 broad codes which are going to come to subsume all the labor legislations which we have today. Now let me come up to first of all talk about Wage Code 2019. See, each code, if I have to give you what is going to change, what is there, what is not there, it will take at least a separate session discussion, because at least minimum 1.5 hours to 2 hours we have to deliberate on each code. So I'm not going to get into very detailed provisions, but I give you some of the salient changes, some of the highlights about it. And then if there are any critical questions, I can answer at the end. But definitely on Wage Code and IR Code, as I said, because the Social Security and OSH Code, Occupational Safety and Health Code, so they are very huge codes, and there are many legislations are subsumed. Still there is a research work is going on, but whatever I know, I definitely I'll be able to answer for if there are any queries on that as well. So let's come to Code on Wages 2019. So this bill was introduced in the Lok Sabha on August 10th, 2017. And originally, because it lapsed because the 16th Lok Sabha dissolved, and this bill was reintroduced in the 17th Lok Sabha on 23rd July 2019 after incorporating certain suggestions of Parliamentary Standing Committee. And Parliament cleared the bill, and also the President assent is received. Now the Code on Wages is an act now. And is it implemented is the question. See, if I have to answer this question, recently, if you have looked, if you have followed the news of Mr. Gangawar, who is the labor minister, he said all the labor codes are now, he wants to implement together. And the deadline which they set is December. I have my own doubts, because by December, it is less likely that it's going to happen, because these new 3 labor codes which are recently passed, first they have to prepare the rules, and the rules have to be publicly announced, objections have to be brought, and then they have to consolidate everything. So then also these rules have to be laid before the Parliament for final concurrence. These are all the processes there, but I have my own doubts whether they will be able to bring it by December. But if they want to do it, definitely they can do it. But more practical way, more probably the ideal time for bringing these things into effective date, that could be probably March. And similar to also, even though it is passed in this wage code in 2019, this is made as an act, but it is not implemented. Recently, the central government framed the draft rules for implementation. We all gave our objections, and the rules are not implemented so far, or not notified, and the effective date of the code is also not notified. There is something called as an appointed date in every code, every legislation. Unless the law does not talk about the effective date, there is something called an appointed date. So as long as this appointed date is not fixed, that code will not become effective. So the same case in the Code on Wages 2019 also. So that appointed date is not fixed, as the government would like to implement all the 4 legislations, 4 codes together. The state governments, now after this, what happens is the state governments are required to frame the rules as well, because as I said earlier, the labor matter is in the concurrent list. The central legislations also required to be implemented in the state. So if at all they have to implement, they also are required to frame the rules for each state. See, if the central rules are already available, the state now have the choice to adopt that central rules, or they can have their own rules as well. But majority case, all the state governments, they will take the central rules, and if there are any minor changes, they make it and they announce it for their states. Now, this code has the objective of to amalgamate, simplify, and rationalize the relevant provisions of the 4 central legislations. See, these legislations are basically Minimum Wages Act 1948, Payment of Wages 1936, Payment of Bonus Act, and Equal Remuneration Act. So these are the 4 legislations which are getting subsumed into this code, and 115 sections of all the 4 legislations are now brought under 69 sections in 9 chapters. And the beauty of the code is all applicable definitions for the code are brought together in the first chapter, and for us this means a single definition holds good for the entire code. And there are certain common chapters like preliminary, advisory board, payment of dues, claims and audit, inspector cum facilitator, offenses and penalties, miscellaneous. These are all the common chapters, and there is a separate chapter for minimum wages and payment of bonus, and also payment of wages, payment of bonus, and minimum wages. And this equal remuneration is included in 2 sections in the first chapter itself. So therefore, there is no separate chapter for this. But however, minimum wages and payment of wages and payment of bonus, now they are included it in separate chapters. And now let me give you some highlights or the key changes brought in this code. And if we look at the application, this is code applicable to both organized and unorganized sector, whereas earlier many of the sectors were left out. Now the code wants to cover both organized and unorganized sector employees, and the employee definition is widened, and it covers all employees including managers and supervisors. See, now every code is coming up with this possibility. Now the worker is defined separately and the employee is defined separately. It is basically because they would like to extend certain provisions to employees as well, workers also. So basically, people who are in HR profession and legal profession, they understand what is worker and what is employee also, because employee is a broader word and worker is is a limited scope. So therefore, now the codes have brought all these 2 provisions. As I said, this code also covers managers and supervisors in the employee definition, and it is because they are also working for the salary. So therefore, certain rights of the employees have to be protected as well. And now the contractor is included as an employer. So if you look at this as contract labor and contractor, who is the employer, who is the immediate employer, principal employer, these are all legal debate. So this confusion debate was already there, and now the contractor, now they have included as an employer. Who is responsible still, and is there any complexity? These are all again legal interpretation issues. And even though uniform wage definition is provided, the complexity remains. Is there any problem?
It's going on well. Please.
Okay, good. Okay, so there's some sound is coming. I understood some issues.
No issue. Please go ahead.
Okay. And the advisory board now have the scope to advise on all the matters of the code. See, if you look at the Minimum Wages Act 1948, so it has got an advisory boards. One is the central advisory board and the state advisory boards. And these boards, they have the responsibility of advising the respective appropriate government. See, this appropriate government definition is also very important, because for the state is the appropriate government, for the central is the appropriate government. So now they had the responsibility of advising their appropriate governments. Because of this code and bringing all the legislation there, now the advisory board has the responsibility to advise on all the matters, not only minimum wages. They can advise on payment of wages matters, and they can also advise on bonus matters. These are all coming because the advisory board is common. And there is an increased thrust on increasing gender diversity in establishments. You may know this gender diversity. If you look at how the Indian labor segment is, you will find less number of women folks working in, especially where there is a manufacturing setup. You will see less women folks working. But now every code is trying to understand this requirement, and they would like to increase the gender diversity in establishments. Some of the provisions which are brought in the code, now the government or the advisory board can give a recommendation or advice to a government to increase this employment of women in certain segments. So these are all the provisions which are coming, which especially promotes gender diversity, where this was a stereotype behavior in a certain manufacturing establishment. And let's look at there are provisions to so one of the important change which is brought is provisions are provided to initiate prosecution on employers by the employee and trade union, in addition to inspectors under the code. So far, any labor legislation, if at all, if they have to prosecute an employer, now the inspector is required to inspect and understand, and really he has to come to conclusion if there is a real violation. And more than that, so he also has to, majority of the cases, he has to seek his appropriate government or his superior's permission before prosecuting the employer. But somehow this code says the employee or the trade union can directly prosecute in the criminal court. So this is some of the change which is we are unable to digest so far, and also some of the employers are not able to digest, because it may be because of an error, because it is in the initial stages of the codification. Maybe the government going ahead may neutralize this, and they may still give it to the inspector to take a call. Now, if you look at another change which is coming up is in this code is responsibility for payment of dues of contract employees. See, principal employer is made responsible in case of failure by the contractor. This provision is very well available in the current law, which is Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970. So it is in line with that. So even when the contractor fails, now it is put on principal employer. But however, the major change I see is on the other dues of the contract labor, especially for example bonus, who is required to pay. So if you look at today's current law, bonus and gratuity, it is not the responsibility of the principal employer, but going ahead, the law may put a minimum liability on the principal employer. So the changes have been brought. If you look at today's draft rules of the wage code of central wage code rules, now the wage code rules talks about that if the immediate employer or the contract employer does not pay minimum bonus, then it becomes the liability of the principal employer to pay it. So he may still recover, possibility is there, but these kind of responsibilities are also coming up because of the codification of labor law. And if you look at how the inspection system or the inspector will behave, so now he has the role of facilitation in addition to inspection. And there are provisions are made for web-based inspection system. So these things will be a reality because of the automation and the internet, all these things. Now the inspection system will undergo a lot of changes, and inspector may not come to you, and he may just send a notice to you by either email or an internet platform. Then he will be asked to he will ask you to provide details or records. Then he will inspect online, and then he will send you if there is any problem. And as long as there is no complaints or from the labor force, he may not come to your your industry also. These are the things which are going. And another important development which you also be aware, there will be a random inspection system. So today, if you look at, there is a jurisdiction based inspector. If you go to Tumkur, there is one inspector. If you go to Belgaum, there is one inspector. If you go to Bangalore, there is one inspector. So these things will vanish, because when there is a web-based and random selection basis, anybody who is sitting in the head office or anywhere, so he can be notified as an inspector for your industry or your establishment also. So now I will come back to a graded penalty system. So now the law has got something called graded penalty. So there is a stepwise penalty system is there in case of any contraventions of the code. And another important development which is applicable to for all the codes is, now the provisions are made for composition or compounding of offenses. This composition or compounding is basically was more prevalent in the criminal law. Okay, that too, where there was no imprisonment was not there. There, this you had a possibility to compound your offense. That means you pay certain penalty or money, and then you escape from that imprisonment. So the provisions are still, some of the provisions in the labor law itself is also available. For example, any violation in the Factories Act you do, then the inspector will take it up for a prosecution if at all he is not happy or if he is not convinced with the who is at the default. Then you are required to go to the court, and then there was a possibility to plead guilty and also to put a fine. But now the changes have been brought. Even before going to the court or any stage at the court, you can compound your offense. There are some provisions have been made, so that you need to read it before understanding all these things. And if you look at how the equal remuneration provisions are behaving, so earlier in the Equal Remuneration Act 1976, so it was addressing only the gender discrimination. But today these provisions, they go beyond gender discrimination. See, there should be equal pay for equal work. Not only gender, if somebody is doing a equal work and the skill set, qualification, if they are similar, and he should get the same pay. So that's what I say. So today's provisions travel much beyond gender discrimination. And if you look at how this minimum wages is getting fixed and what is today and what is tomorrow, you had a scheduled employment concept where the appropriate government or the central government had the possibility to notify every establishment or every type of occupation in the scheduled employment concept. And the government used to fix minimum wages for each schedule. So this concept is going. So now you will not have any scheduled employment concept. So now, because if you look at the draft rules, now they have given you classification of occupations, and the government will also have possibility to add whatever these occupations going ahead, and they will fix based on your region wise or state wise or whatever this geography wise, they will fix it up. So there is no 40-50 scheduled employment concept going ahead. And now there is another important change which is coming up is the central government has the authority to fix national floor wages. So once the central government fix this national floor wage, the state government cannot fix less than the floor wages. See, there is one practical difficulty or example I can also give you. If you look at government of Goa, if you look at what is the central government notifications, the central government has fixed higher wages, whereas in the government of Goa, now they have a lesser wages. It may be situation in many other states also, even in Tamil Nadu, for example. So now the state governments cannot go less than the floor wages what is getting fixed by the central government. So there may be some uniformity also, some threshold limits also may come up. And if I talk about another important changes, this authorized deductions is basically, if you look at how these authorized deductions will behave, the employer cannot reduce or deduct from the wages anything more than what is authorized. There is some 15-16 lists are given, so you cannot travel beyond that. So these authorized deductions are largely retained, but there are a couple of here and there are minor changes. And this the wage ceiling which was available earlier for applicability, for the Payment of Wages Act applicability, there was a wage ceiling. So that wage ceiling is now going. So there is no wage ceiling for applicability. So every employee is covered under the code. Now, if I have to talk about the bonus and calculation methodology, so there is no change. There is no, I mean, on the logic concept, there is no change, but there is one change which I see is who is eligible for the bonus and what is the threshold to calculate threshold of wages to calculate bonus. Now the fixing that ceiling now rests with the appropriate government. See, the moment I say appropriate government, it can be state government for Karnataka state, and for people who are coming under public sector undertakings are all central government. So now both can fix the this ceiling. So this ceiling probably may create a certain confusion and disparity in the states, because if the Karnataka government fixes eligibility ceiling at certain levels, the other state governments can also deviate it. So this anomaly needs to be corrected going ahead. Hopefully the law will correct it. So I'm not sure about it, but if they don't correct it, so we will have to live with this anomaly, and the appropriate government will decide it. So now I have given you some of the highlights of IR code, wage code. Now I'll give you some of the highlights of IR code. This itself it takes more than 20 minutes, but I'll try to also give you as short as possible, and then I have to cover two more codes also very briefly. But however, this IR code I have already talked about it much, and there is a detailed YouTube video also available. If some of you are interested, can also go to my YouTube channel and also watch this. But in this session also I will try to give you some of the salient features and what changes are happening also. See, this revised bill was introduced in the Lok Sabha on 20th September 2020, and now this is also passed by both the houses along with other codes, Social Security and Occupational Health and Safety Code. And this code consolidate three legislations, which are basically Trade Union Act 1926, Industrial Employment Training Orders Act 1946, and the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So these, especially the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, it is itself is like a code, even though it is a act with some 70 or 40, 45 or 60 sections, but there are sub provisions and there are a lot of interpretations. So that is why the Industrial Dispute Act 1947 itself is like a code, and these provisions are contained in 88 sections of all these three legislations. Now these are spread out to 104 sections, and these all 104 sections are spread out in 14 chapters. And the beauty, as I said, all these things is all applicable definitions for the code are now brought together in the first chapter, and this means a single definition holds good for all the topics of the code, which includes trade union matters, standing orders, and also industrial disputes. Now there are some new definitions are introduced in the code. One is employee definition, because this employee definition is a foreign matter, especially for industrial dispute trade union. Now this employee definition is also brought in the code, and this employee includes supervisory and managerial staff. What is the applicability? What is the use? These are all again debate and interpretation issues. One applicability which I can also tell you is, hope nobody from worker representation is there in the session. See, for example, if we are talking about trade union, it's not only the workers can make a trade union. Every employee, as far as the Trade Union Act 1926 is concerned, even now the code also, every employee, whether you, me, whoever it is, can make a trade union under the act, under the code, and register. So probably these kind of issues, the employee definition is provided in the IR code. And there is an employer definition is also introduced. Earlier it was more of an industrial dispute related and industrial establishment. These definitions were available. Now the employer definition is introduced. But another thing which you see, also the major development you see, there is a similarity between these codes. If you look at the wage definition, this wage definition is common to all the codes. And with all its complexity, it is brought in every code. And similar, the employer definition is also coming up like that. And now occupier and manager are included as employer in case of factory, and the contractor is also included as an employer. Another important change, which is fixed term employment, is introduced. But however, recently most of the central, state governments have already enacted their or amended their model standing orders. But now, anyhow, it is official. Now it is coming up in the IR code, and for these people, all statutory benefits, even though this the period of employment does not exceed to the qualifying period of employment required in any statute, so all benefits have to be extended. But however, there is one change in the case of gratuity. Eligibility for gratuity is only if he renders services under the contract for a period of 1 year. So that change has been brought, and there was one explanation for layoff definition. So this was omitted in the last bill 2019. Now it is brought back, and it's also in case of retrenchment for termination of service of a worker on the ground of continued ill health, so was omitted. Now it is came back. And now retrenchment definition specifically excludes termination of service of the worker as a result of completion of tenure of fixed term employment. And now, because of the IR code changes, the concerted casual leave on a given day by 50% or more workers employed in an industry also amounts to a strike. And as I said already, there are more similarities between these codes, especially in the definition sections. So the wage definition is exactly same as the definition provided in the Code on Wages 2019, and it has come up with all its complexities. And on the wage definition, I have already talked much, and there is a detailed video is available on my YouTube. You can have a look at it, what complexity it is bringing, how to overcome all these issues. These are all addressed already. Yes, sir.
No, you can go ahead. Somebody disturbed in between. No issue. Please go ahead.
Okay. So these are all these things. Complexities are all there. So you can already watch these complexities and the definitions in detail. And I also say a new avatar of worker definition is introduced with few major changes. And these working journalist, newspaper, and sales promotion of employees are all now are coming up in the in the worker definition. So these were separate legislations were available, especially to protect the interest of these people. There was a separate legislation. Now, because of the coverage, so everybody is coming into the code scope. And the monthly ceiling, salary ceiling for excluding the supervisor from the worker definition now is set at exceeding 18K, but which was now earlier in the wage code, it was 15,000. Whereas in the Industrial Dispute Act, it remains still 10,000 rupees, exceeding 10,000 rupees. But if you look at, because of the 1 year gap, now wage code talked about 15,000. Now the IR code is talking about 18,000 rupees. So wage code may also get changed the moment they implement. So they may revise also. And the worker definition includes all employees, including unorganized employees, for the purpose of Chapter 3. This Chapter 3 is basically a trade union. See, I already talked about in my previous discussion that anybody, whether he is an employee or worker, everybody can make a trade union under the IR code or under the Trade Union Act 1926. There is no bar. What rights they will have, what obligations they will have, it depends on all the rights and provisions of the Industrial Dispute Act, now the IR code. So only for the purpose of Chapter 3, which is trade union, everybody is covered. If you are working for salary or remuneration, then you are covered. And even though the contractor is included as employer, the contract labor is not defined separately. Whereas in the wage code, it was available. In other codes, it is also available. But in the IR code, contract labor definition is not available. And going ahead, there will not be any labor codes. Some noise came. Is it okay?
No, please go ahead. I request everyone to mute your phones, please.
Yeah. Going ahead, there will not be any labor codes. Therefore, if you look at the ID Act schedule, second schedule and third schedules, which define the jurisdiction matters, now they have been dropped. And the provisions related to Grievance Redressal Committee, shortly I will call it as GRC, this went through changes even compared to 2019 bill and original ID Act provisions. And applicability for establishments having 20 or more workers, that is as it is written. The maximum limit of members in the GRC is now increased to 10, which was 6 earlier. And there is adequate representation of women workers in proportion to the total women workers employed is required. Earlier, this was more of a as far as practicable basis. That's what I said. Now, the courts are giving a lot of importance for gender diversity, and they would like to balance that situation. So now there is a equal representation of women folks is required in GRC, that is Grievance Redressal Committee, and the right of workers to raise industrial dispute out of individual grievance is now quite altered. So I will tell you what is the alteration. And the application before the GRC, which is Grievance Redressal Committee, to be filed within 1 year from the date of cause of action, which was earlier 3 years, even in the code of 2019 bill. And the dispute due to dismissal, discharge, retrenchment, or termination will be an industrial dispute even when there is no collective nature of the dispute. See, there is a long history whether the individual dispute is a industrial dispute or not. So originally this individual dispute was not an industrial dispute. After that, there are a lot of amendments came. Then the law has to specifically say it that it individual dispute also is an industrial dispute for the remedy under the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So there were a lot of judgments came up because if there is a dispute is not espoused by or supported by trade union, then it did not qualify for industrial dispute. So that is why even in the Industrial Dispute Act, a lot of amendments came up to make this individual dispute as industrial dispute. So now the court says that even if there is no collective nature, individual dispute related to dismissal, discharge, retrenchment, or termination will also be an industrial dispute. That is the current situation also. But now there is a very clarity is given in this topic. Now the worker can take up the dispute before the tribunal for adjudication of his grievance or dispute after the expiry of 45 days from the date of application to conciliation. So now there is a possibility to take up this matter which is before the GRC to conciliation, from conciliation to tribunal also. And if you look at how this limitation for industrial dispute is happening, limitation of 2 years is set in the case of individual disputes arising out of discharge, dismissal, retrenchment, or otherwise termination of service. See, this limitation word is a foreign word for industrial dispute also. There was no much clarity was there. There were some state amendments were available, but this limitation was a foreign matter. Now at least for the individual dispute, this limitation of 2 years is set. However, this limitation runs from the date of discharge, dismissal, retrenchment, or otherwise termination of service. So this clarity has been brought. And there is something called trade union related topics also. I'm not getting into these details because of the time issues, but I can only tell you what the situation is. If at all you have to register a trade union, there was a requirement of 7 members which are connected to the actual establishment work. So these 7 members for registration is not mandatory. However, after the registration, so the trade union is required to maintain this 10% or 100 of the workmen, whichever is less, subject to a minimum of 7, engaged or employed in establishment or industry with which is connected. So this is continued, whereas for a registration, now this limit has been taken out. Basically, while registration, they don't want to make any complications out of it, but this can be a problem for small scale industries, because if there is a 50 employees in a small scale industry, 10% is basically not 7 people, so it is quite lesser. So probably because of these complexities now, or the trade union, the unions also want to increase their membership. So this this requirement for the registration has been utilized intelligently. That is what I would like to say, and I will move on. Now this negotiating council or negotiating union has been brought. So if I have to talk about this topic today, there is no law, central legislation, which makes recognition of trade union in the industry, makes it obligatory. So there is nothing like that. However, in the case of Bombay and Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, some of the states, they have their own law and they provide a legal recognition, a legal provision for recognizing. But however, there is no central legislations. Therefore, largely the recognition of union is not mandatory. Okay, if it is only between the union and the employer, it was optional. So now the IR code is making it mandatory. So if there is a trade union and if there is a registered trade union, then the employer is required to recognize that union as negotiating union. And if there is only one union, how to recognize if there is a multiple union. So these are all addressed in detail in the IR code, and this validity period for the recognition is also provided. And the code also says that the facilities to be provided by industrial establishment to a negotiating union or negotiating council. See, these facilities basically, this is also this word is also not normal to us. The employer used to just refuse if they ask for some stationery, some office, all those things, and it was also right thing to do also. But now it is influenced by our other counterparts in Europe and other places, where this workers council concept is very established and regularized, and they will have a full-time worker council members also. So they will not do anything other than trade union work. So these are the things, principles the the labor code would like to bring. Probably because of that reason, now the code also says the required facilities to be provided for the negotiating union or negotiating council. So the facilities may be like this, similar stationery, time off, and also office. These are all things will come. So what facilities have to be given, they are still yet to be prescribed. That probably may come in the rules. Now, there in the Trade Union Act, there are three important rights of the trade union, which is immunity from civil suit in certain cases, criminal conspiracy in furtherance of objects of trade union, and enforceability of agreements. So these are the important immunities. I'm not getting into the details because then I have to get into these provisions, and then there are a lot of case laws whether right to strike is a fundamental right or not. These things will come, but I can only tell you that all provisions are retained as it is. Now, this applicability of the standing orders, now the provisions of the standing orders are applicable to establishments having 300 or more workers, whereas it was 100 or more in the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946. But of course, you may know some of the states have reduced this also to 50, and in some cases it is 20 also, because in the case of Goa it is 20. That's what I understand. So there was a possibility, and now the state governments have no power to extend this to establishments having less than 300, which is good one, because otherwise they would have reduced also based on what government comes up in their state. And there is no application of the chapter if the number of workers reduced to less than 300, as this provision is dropped in the new code compared to the 2019 bill. James sir, can I take some more 10 more minutes?
Yes, please go ahead. You'll have about 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. See, the power to prescribe model standing orders is now rests with the central government instead of appropriate government. See, if you look at these model standing orders is a big business, and also every state government used to prescribe these model standing orders, and we could see a lot of variations in this one. Now the central government itself is saying, as a big brother, boss, you don't do it, I will do for you. You just follow that. So that is how now the model standing orders are now going to get prescribed by the central government rather than each state government, and leading that to a lot of complexity. So that's going away. And there are provisions are made for deemed certification. If you adopt the model standing orders, you don't need to go for a certification process of your standing orders, because this is also a big episode and big affair. You go to, you elect your representatives, go to certifying officer. All these things were there. So now if you say no, nothing is doing, I'm going to follow the model standing orders, I will adopt it. So you will have a deemed certification. You are not required to go to government and get it certified. But however, there is an information in this regard is required to be provided to the certifying officer. And time limit to complete the disciplinary proceedings in case of suspension pending inquiry, the provisions are made. So this is also one of the complexity, or lot of time used to take place for this. If there is a suspension pending inquiry of any employee, it used to run for 6 months, 1 year. I have done a lot of inquiries also. It used to go to sometimes 2 years also. Now the provision says both investigation and inquiry to be completed ordinarily within 90 days from the date of suspension. There was no legislation for this purpose. There is no provision other than the Supreme Court judgment. In one of the case, Supreme Court said that you ordinarily complete within 90 days. That is the provision now. The code also has it, but however, it says ordinarily. It's not making it very compulsory for you. So you have to make all efforts to complete this in 90 days. So that is the important provision has been brought. Another important chapter or the provision for us is notice of change. See, this is also a big chapter under Section 9A in the Industrial Dispute Act. This was available. Now these provisions are contained in Section 40 and 41. But there are some additional exceptions are provided. If you if you want to change any conditions of service, which is basically there is a schedule in the IDEA Act. Any matters if you have to change, then you have to give a certain days of notice. So that requirement, and if the employee does not agree, then they will go to conciliation, and during the process of conciliation you cannot change. So that complexities are still continued. But however, as I said, there are some additional exceptions. This notice is not required in case of emergent situation, which is very emergency situation, which requires a change of shift or shift working otherwise than in accordance with the standing orders. If there is nothing is specified in standing orders, you can still change it in the case of emergent situation. However, consultation with grievance redressal committee is necessary before such change. And no notice is also required, is not required if such change is affected in accordance with the orders of the appropriate government. Now this appropriate government has the power to affect, you say that there is no notice is required for certain change. So that is also provision is available. So these are the provisions are made. Now it's also important to, little bit deliberate how this industrial resolution of industrial dispute, is going. So I would always say this has undergone a major surgery, because if you look at, these are the current mechanism. You have conciliation officer, you have board of conciliation, you have court of inquiry, you have labor court, you have industrial tribunal, you have national tribunal. So these are the machineries available. So what is going to change? So along with, there is a voluntary arbitration is also available. So what is that is going to change is, if you look at, so going ahead, there is no board of conciliation, there is no court of inquiry, there is no labor court. So only conciliation officer, industrial tribunal and national industrial tribunal. Of course, this voluntary arbitration is continued. So that is why I always say, when I'm speaking about this topic, there is a major surgery has taken place. And this industrial tribunal will have now 2 members. So earlier it's only 1 presiding officer. Now there will be a judicial member and administrative member. So I'm not quite not happy with 2019 and 2020 bill, because in 2019 bill there were beautiful provisions. People like us, professional like us also could have become an administrative member. The qualifications were set for that, which was suiting to all people like us. But now, the government is saying now the government will prescribe and they will decide. What they will decide, I don't know. Anyhow, that's a good development, because this judicial member and administrative member will constitute as a bench. What matters can be decided bench by bench. These are all prescribed, and how the decision ought to be made also is explained. So that also has to be with the consensus. All these provisions are being brought. And going ahead, there is no reference of disputes from the government, because this was one of the important feature of Industrial Dispute Act, I would say. If there is a apprehension, or if there is an industrial dispute, or the parties request for the appropriate government, now the appropriate government had the possibility to refer this dispute to either labor court or industrial tribunal, depending upon the nature of the dispute. But now there is no reference is going to be there. The matters unsettled by the conciliation officer can be taken to the industrial tribunal by the parties within 90 days from the date of receipt of report. So you can go to section 53(6) of the code. It will talk about it. So now the parties have their own mechanism. After 90 days, they can straight away go to the industrial tribunal. There is only one industrial tribunal is going to be there. There is no labor court at all. And of course, there are some general prohibition on strikes and lockouts. Earlier there was a public utility service concept was there. Now it is dropped. All these restrictions which were basically available for public utility services on strikes and lockouts now have been extended for all cases of strikes and lockout. See, in the case of strike or lockout, there are 2 riders. One is 60 days notice before strike or lockout is necessary. This is one of the criteria. This was earlier 6 weeks. Now 60 days, or another rider is cannot go on strike within 14 days from the date of notice. These are the two inner and outer limits. So this is being extended to everyone. And no strike or lockout during the pendency of conciliation or adjudication proceedings. This is continued. And coming back to layoff, retrenchment and closure, it's basically chapter 5A and 5B of IDEA Act, now chapter 9 and chapter 10. And there is a provision to rehire retrenched employees. Now this is slightly modified. Now the code says employer is required to consider the retrenched employees only if he wishes to rehire any person within 1 year of such retrenchment. This limitation was not earlier available. Now it is available. And the compensation is not payable for the closure of mining operations due to exhaustion of minerals if the alternative employment is provided. This provision was already available. However, within what radius was not there. Within what radius the alternate employment to be provided was not available. Now the code says the alternate employment is required to be provided within a radius of 20 kilometers. So this is the new provision has been brought. Barring this, there are no changes. And coming back to chapter 5B or chapter 9, chapter 10, this basically talks about certain special provisions in case of factories, mines, and plantation. So as per this chapter 5B, any company or any establishment, factory or mine or plantation having 100 or more workers, they were required permission from the government to lay off, retrench, and close. Now this applicability has been extended to establishments having 300 or more workers, which is definitely, in my view, it's a very good move, because it's going to help a lot of medium and small scale sectors. Now they are not required to go to government for permission issues. Now the possibility to increase this threshold in the hands of appropriate government is also provided. So now is only upward increase. They can increase this threshold, not decrease it. So that is also a good move. And the power of state governments to apply the provisions related to closure to seasonal establishment under this chapter is dropped. And the appropriate government now will have the possibility to alter or vary the compensation in case of retrenchment and closure. So now they can increase also or decrease also. So this provision has been made. So other than that, there are no other changes. And there is a worker reskilling fund concept has been brought, and the employer is required to pay 15 days wages last drawn in case of any retrenched worker. And this fund will be used to credit 15 days wages for retrenched worker within 45 days of such retrenchment. I don't understand what is the logic of this provision, because if at all the government wants to pay 15 days more wages to the retrenched worker, they would have very well made a provision under the retrenchment chapter to pay that additional 15 days wages. What logic? Probably the government will be able to explain or bring rules in the days ahead. So let's hope for the best for this. So there are some other changes, like there is a graded increased penalties and punishments, and of course compounding and composition of offences. Same thing is brought. However, even now offences which attracts imprisonment also can be compounded, which was not available in wage code. And provisions of section 33 of the IDEA Act, which basically altering or varying conditions of service during the pendency of proceedings before any authority, which was available in IDEA Act. So now under section 90, so the same provisions have been continued. And the schedule under the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act now forms part of the code as first schedule, and the fifth schedule of IDEA Act now forms part of the code as second schedule. And what is ghost law is now defined in the second schedule for clarity. The fourth schedule of IDEA Act, notice of change, is now forms part of the code as the third schedule. All other schedules are dropped as they've lost their relevance. So I will give you shortly in another 5 or 6 minutes about OSH code and Social Security code. If you look at OSH code, it amalgamates, simplifies, and rationalizes the relevant provisions of the 13 legislation relating to occupation, safety, health, and working conditions of workers. So if you look at, I have given you this 13 legislation, including Factories Act, Plantation Labor Act, Mines, so even the CLRA, Contract Labor Act. So they have all been submerged into OSH code. And the OSH code 2020 has 143 sections spread across 14 chapters with 3 schedules, and there are enormous changes have been brought. That's why I said it requires a detailed research and also comparison of the old law to new law and bring up certain detailed analysis on it. You can keep watching my channel. I will give also update on these two codes very shortly with detailed changes. And to talk about coverage, the provisions of OSS code applies to all establishments having 10 or more workers other than the establishment relating to mines and docks, and it applies to all mines, docks and establishments carrying out any hazardous or life-threatening activity, so regardless of the number of workers. And certain provisions of the code such as health and working conditions apply to all employees, whether he is a worker or not a worker, so it doesn't matter, it applies to everyone. And employees include workers and all other persons earning wage for any work, including managerial, administrative or supervisory work. I said already, these employee and worker definitions are very important. Why the law or the code has brought? Because certain rights have to be protected for every sector of the employee. You may be a white collar, you may be a blue collar worker, but ultimately you are a worker, because you are working under somebody and you earn wages. Maybe 50,000, somebody earns a 50,000 and somebody earns a 15,000. That is only the matter. But you are working under someone, therefore the rights have to be protected. And occupational safety and health code will also cover workers from an IT and service sector. So this is what the important thing. And if you're going ahead, one establishment and one license will be a reality, because if you look at today, there are many registration. Under Contract Labor Act, you need a registration. Under the Factories Act, you need a registration. If you are establishment, you need a registration. And under Gratuity Act, you have to give a notice of opening to a controlling authority. These are all provisions were there. So now one establishment, one license will be a reality. Every employer is required to issue appointment letter. Employment of women is allowed round the clock, subject to safety and other conditions. So today, if you look at the employment of women is not allowed, between 7 p.m. to morning 6 a.m. But however, some of the state governments have brought amendment and they have allowed the employment of women round the clock. But barring that, there was no central provision on this. Now the code is saying so you can go ahead with this one. However, the safety and other conditions have to be taken care. And the penalty on the employer in case of violations and accidental death. Now the provisions are made to pay 50% of the amount to the dependents of the deceased employee. This was not available under the current law. And the provisions related to factories are applicable if it has 20 workers or 40 workers instead of the earlier 10 or 20. So now the coverage is enhanced. Instead of 10 or 20, so now it is 20 or 40. And then similar way for contract labor legislation also. The provisions related to contract labors are applicable to establishments or contractors employing 50 or more contract workers instead of the current 20 or more. So now you saw the lot of amendments which are also took place in Karnataka. So they also made similar to that. Now because of the legislative issues, that the original bill which is failed. When I was updating this topic in my YouTube video, I also told that it is a short-lived ordinance. If at all they would like to bring changes, permanent changes, they have to bring a bill and then they have to bring a legislative changes. So they introduced the bill, but in the upper house now it is failed. They are going to issue another ordinance. But good thing is that now the code is containing all these things. The moment the code becomes effective, so the state legislation is not required. So that's what I will make my conclusions accordingly. So key changes, interstate workers, senior workers, working journalists are all now covered under the code. Let me give you very briefly also Social Security Code 2020. See, this code has the objective to provide social security coverage like Provident Fund, ESI, gratuity, medical benefits, and other benefits for the employees in all sectors. See, if you look at today, how the Social Security is driving is, each and every act. For example, Provident Fund Act covers certain segment of employees. ESI covers certain segment of employees. These were all there. But the objective of the code is to, cover everyone, all sectors, whether it is unorganized or organized, everyone, how they will do it. So these are all provisions are made in the code, and going ahead, they will bring up all clarity in the way of rules. And this code subsumes 9 existing legislations like EPF, ESIC, maternity benefit, and BOCW, payment of gratuity, and this employment exchange compulsory notification is also subsumed into it. Senior Workers Welfare Fund Act, Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008, and Employees Compensation Act, which was earlier called as Workman Compensation Act. So now These are all legislations are getting subsumed. And some of the changes, first time in the history of labor law, these gig workers and platform workers are covered and defined in the code for your information. And this gig worker means a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of the traditional employer-employee relationship. And these gig workers are in independent arrangements like freelancers, workers who are employed on a project-based work and short-term work. And this most commonly this platform-based work where workers earn money by providing specific services, including food delivery services. Like today you talk about this Zomato and other people. No, these are not called as workers. They are basically partners. So these things today, as I said in the beginning, the law, the requirements of the society is evolving, and the law also has to change. Of course, there are some changes by way of codes and bringing all these things we are seeing. And there is a platform workers also is introduced. He means a person engaged in or undertaking platform work. Platform work means a form of employment in which organizations or individuals use an online platform to access other organizations or individual to solve specific problems or to provide specific services in exchange for payment. Now, and as I said, uniform definitions are provided for all the purpose of the code, similar to other codes. And each scheme contains various provisions under the respective chapter, because there is a separate chapter for ESI, there is a subject chapter for PF, gratuity, maternity. So there are detailed provisions. More or less, the substantive provisions are similar, but how they are going to administer, who are all covered, these are the changes which are coming up. So I've come to the end of it. Let me give you some short conclusions what I made it. See, these changes have led to few more complexity and confusions, as there are new definitions, provisions, and situations have come up. For example, I gave you a wage definition, which is very complex and is very difficult also. And going ahead, if it goes to the court, then definitely the courts will not agree with certain logics. And the law is required to mature in the days ahead, okay, by judicial interpretation and also appropriate amendments, considering the requirements and changed situations. Now we have certain changes, modifications, but there is a maturity is required. Going ahead, some of the topics will go to definitely the court. Now the court will go to interpretation issues, and going ahead in some years, 1 or 2 years, it will start maturing it. And we may see the power conflict between states and central government, considering the reduced scope for states. What we are seeing is the big brother is saying, I will do everything, and the chota brothers they are saying, so we have no power, so you are doing everything. So there may be a conflict between states and central government. Of course, if there is the same government, in the central and state, there not be a scope for disputes or conflict. But if there is a different governments are available, different parties are ruling, then there may be a situation of conflict which is going to, we have to see that. And the time will only tell us what and how far the changes protect the interests of both the parties and lead to prosperity of the society. Because I already said, is the government overdoing or compromising the interest of the workers? So these are all, this time will only tell us how far this will protect both the interests. And definitely experts will continue to have their jobs, considering the new dynamics and issues in the law. Don't think that the codification have happened, there is a simplification process have happened. No, the answer to this is no. The complexity still remains, and experts like me are going to have the job still. Thank you very much. And these are my coordinates. Anybody has got any clarification, even now and today, tomorrow, anytime, they can always reach to me. These are my coordinates. Thank you very much. And now over to you, Dr. James.
Thank you, Mr. Govindraj. Excellent, very wonderful presentation. Without any break, you spoke, such an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
In the chat box, there's a lot of appreciations coming in.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And there are a couple of questions. I request you to answer that.
Okay. Can you read out for me, or can I read it?
In the chat box, I think first from Dr. Victor Prasad.
Okay.
Let me. Yeah, I will read out. National floor wage by Central will definitely give upper hand to union office bearers to demand the same as minimum wage at different states. Please comment.
Just a minute. Okay, see, it's a valid comment made by Dr. Victor Prasad. the objective of the government is, to bring some uniformity. Of course, there is a lot of complexity, whether national floor wage will be for the entire nation or for a geography based. So this is also be, it's a quite a, debatable task, because the cost of living in different areas is different. If the central government is picked this floor wages for entire country, then that doesn't make a proper logic. So in that way, what Dr. Viktor Prasad is saying is 100% true. I agree with him.
Thank you, Mr. Govindraj. Can you just switch on your video, Mr. Govindraj?
Yes, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next question from Mr. Ajitab Sinha.
Okay.
The statutory forms like PF, gratuity, etc., which a new joiner submits while joining a company. Is it mandatory that these documents are to be signed physically, or can the forms be signed digitally by joiners and the same can be still valid and acceptable by the authorities?
Yeah, no. His question is valid. Going ahead, this physical signature will vanish, because the government is bringing online, validation. Even the claim settlements are today happening through, KYC and other things. So these physical signing papers or all these things will vanish, and there will not be any violations going ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Govindraj. One more question from him.
Yeah.
With regard to grievance redressal committee, is it necessary to have a GRC as per IDA Act section 9C, or
Yes.
the company may not necessarily form a GRC in case they have a grievance redressal mechanism prevalent within the system?
Yeah, there is one provision in IDA Act. If they have a grievance redressal mechanism already, they can take an exemption. But now that provision is not available in the IR code. So once the IR code comes, they should have the GRC. So that provision has been brought.
Okay, thank you. There is another question. I think the name is not mentioned. Galaxy A9 only it is shown.
Okay.
What about provisions regarding work committee in the latest amendment?
I didn't hear you.
What about the provisions regarding works committee? There is a questions.
Yeah, works committee provision is retained. So that is going to be there. But however, currently it is not mandatory. If at all the government wants to implement that, they have to give a separate notification. So as long as there is no notification, so there will not be any implementation. Even under the IDEA Act, this works committee provision is still there. But they have to bring up either a special or general order to make it applicable. So the same provision is continued in the IR code as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Govindraj.
Yeah.
Another question from Mr. Ashish Jindal.
Okay.
Can you explain the difference between the center and state minimum wages and how it is implemented?
Okay. See, for this, you have to know what is this appropriate government definition. So when we talk about appropriate government, especially like, these central public sector undertakings where the central government has got the control, these are all coming under the, appropriate central government. Other than this, the state government is the appropriate government. The logic is same. How they decide is basically, how much money or how much essential commodities are required and how the cost of living is behaving. So based on this, they have a logic of fixing the minimum wages. See, earlier there was no much clarity available. Now, thanks to wage code, now they have fixed up how much, cloth has to be taken and how many units have to be taken, what should be your rental. These are all fixed up in the wage code. So this clarity earlier was not available. Now, thanks to the wage code, these are all there now.
Thank you, Mr. Govindra. There is a question, request from one of the participants whether your presentation can be shared.
Yeah, yes. Why not? Why not? Why?
Right.
You are sharing any of your record? You have recorded this. You can share it also. The link also.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll upload in YouTube, and you also will be uploading in YouTube, right?
Yes, yes,
so
yes,
that,
yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So definitely everybody can utilize his presentation.
Yes.
And any more questions? If anybody wants, please raise your hand and ask. We are coming towards the end of question answer session. Probably one more question. We'll be able to one more question. Anybody else?
ಗೋವಿಂದರಾಜ್ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ್ ಮೂರ್ತಿ
ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿ.
ಬೇಸಿಕಲಿ ಈಗ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಅವರು ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಸಿಚುಯೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪೀಪಲ್ ವಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಟು ಲೇ ಆಫ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರೈಂಟ್ಸ್.
ಓಕೆ.
So how managements can handle this situation, because employee is also getting affected, the employer is also getting affected. Yeah. So what is the best model, and how management should take call on this?
Okay, see, basically, one is the legislative provision, whether you are allowed to do or not, and the second one is the humanity ground. See, first one, if I have to talk about whether legislative provisions are available, barring the IR code which is going to come, now some of the state governments have brought their ordinances, and some failed and some still existing. They have allowed certain industries like 300, less than 300. They have all done it. So if there are amendments are already there, you can go ahead and lay off even for a COVID reason. Because if you look at the definition of layoff, natural calamity is also one of the reason for layoff, and also it is a valid reason. So they can do a layoff considering that it is a natural calamity. But if there is an IR situation, they may, if there are no clear-cut provisions or exemptions are available, they may make a, issue out of it. So my, what do you say? My advice to all of you and you is, if there is a possibility to come to certain understanding with the labor and have certain balancing act, that will help, rather than only resorting to legal provisions, because ultimately workers are workers. They are also getting affected. But if they become adamant, then you are left with no option to use the legislative provisions available. But if there is a possibility to balance the interests and negotiate with them, come to certain understanding, so it should work in my view.
Thank you, Mr. Govindaraj. We are coming towards the end of this session.
Yeah.
Excellent and vibrant presentation. And our next session is on Monday, on 5th October. The topic is Great Place to Work Certification and Role of HR by Dr. Madeti Victor Prasad, Vice President Human Resources and Strategy of Elmasher India Private Limited. This is going to be another excellent presentation, and I am quite sure that everybody will join. On behalf of the association, I would like to request Mr. Venkatesh Murthy, Vice President of MSW Socialites and General Manager of Cuss Corp, to propose the vote of thanks. Mr. Venkatesh Murthy, please.
Thank you, Dr. James. I must appreciate and give big thanks to Mr. Govindaraj for his continuous, more than 2 hours, I think now, more than 2 hours, he elaborated the labor laws, the present condition, and I must thank once again. So basically, Govindaraju has focused on the labor laws, how in India, as Indian Constitution provisions made to give liberty for the employees as well as for the employer the right business opportunities to do. So with that note is how 100 plus labor laws has been consolidated and made 4 codes recently and proposed as a code in the parliament, as well as act has been approved by the president, and now the next process of rules provisions to be made and implemented for further implementation. So basically he covered wage code, IR code, and social security, as well as health, safety, and working conditions codes. Has been very elaborately explained. Yes, it is very difficult to digest by HR professionals all these legal terminologies and classes. I think he has given his videos with respect to each and every acts when it was bought under various codes, and as and when there is a change in the labor laws, he is the one who is giving updates to all our HR fraternity here in Karnataka. So I think I don't want to get into the details because I tried to make summary, but almost it is went out above 20 pages. So I thought, let me not get into the details. So I request all the participants to raise your questions through chat box or send a mail to Dr. James. We can get back with through proper channels. So I must once again thank Govindraj for his efforts and consolidation of this labor codes, particularly how the labor laws plays a major role in employees as well as management's perspective was highlighted very beautifully. I must, on behalf of Mysore University MSW Socialites Forum, I thank him. I would like to thank all the senior professionals who are participating in this, particularly Mr. Jebakumar, Mr. Sri Ganesh, Mr. Victor Paul, one of our senior teacher, Professor Ramanaya, and all other faculty. They are there in the forum. I must thank all the professionals as well as teaching faculty, students, research scholars who are part of this particular labor law session. Very interesting session, Govindraju. Once again, on behalf of association, I thank you. Thank you all for your support and participation.
Yeah,
thank you, Dr. James.
Much honored, and thank you.
Thank you, Venkatesh Murthy, for your excellent summing up as well as proposing the vote of thanks. Thank you, Mr. Govindraj, personally and also on behalf of the HR fraternity. And thank you, Mr. Jebakumar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Victor Prasad, Mr. Sri Ganesh. Thank you, everyone. And let us meet on Monday at 11:30 a.m.
Sure. Thank you, Govindraj, for the excellent presentation.
Hey, thank you, sir.
We appreciate
all credits to you.
Thank you, Kiran.
We appreciate
Thanks,
the kind of efforts you put in, and it's a great value addition. Yes.
Thanks, sir, for organizing, and thanks, Govindraju. As usual, you just killed it. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you, Kiran. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I request Dr. Sima to.
Thank you, Govind.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Shankar here.
Thank you all.
I'll end the meeting for all.
Thank you.
And Victor Prasad will have a challenge on Monday.
Yes, all words like Jabba has finished, Govindraj.
All centuries only.
Please join by 11:15. Better.
Definitely, we'll do that. Okay, thank you all. Have a nice
I request
weekend.
all participants to join by 11:15 on Monday. Thank
Good
you for
participation. Today we crossed 91, 92. It went up.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
great.
But
Thank you, sir.
There will be a lot of.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I end the meeting, sir? Shankar
Yeah,
here.
please. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you, Shankar.
Thank you.
Thanks
you,
for
sir.
all the coordination support
Shankar.
provided. Thank you, Simha, also.
Ah,
Thank you,
Sima, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sima.